Hi guys, welcome to Bridge Course. So this Bridge Course will help you to understand the basics of your 10th and it will help you to understand the 11th standard subjects as well as 12th. This will help you to approach the concepts and the questions in case of theory as well as conceptual questions in 11th and 12th using this bridge course. So before we move into the bridge course, I have a question. Who is the father of modern chemistry? Who can answer? Yeah, try to think. I'll give you a hint. He is the father of modern chemistry, helped Dalton for Dalton atomic theory. He is none other than Antony Lavoisier. He is the father of modern chemistry because of his book, Elements of Chemistry. So this in Elements of Chemistry, he helped writing something called as Law of Conservation of Mass. Law of Conservation of Mass. So this law helped Dalton, where the Dalton said that the mass of the reactant should be equal to mass of products. The mass of reactants equals the mass of products. The Dalton put forth a postulate saying that the atoms are rearranged in a chemical reaction, right? But no new compound is formed, right? There is new compound, but there is only formed through rearrangements. There is no new atom out of somewhere else which gets into the reaction and forms. So that was the postulate put forth by Dalton. It was confirmed by this law of conservation of mass. Now, moving on to the bridge course. What did we learn in the 10th standard? We learned about the carbon and its compounds, right? What is the valency, the tetravalent of carbon, and we learned about how the alcohols are present, carboxylic acid are present, which are the different functional groups, which are present in the carbon, and what are the reactions which it undergoes, where it is useful for, isn't it? So this is what you have learned. What else? We learned about periodic table, where you have a periodic table, and this periodic table here is given by Mendeleev, isn't it? How did Mendeleev actually come into the uh, producing this periodic table? How did he actually compose the periodic table based on its properties, based on the trends of atomic size, ionization energy? All these things you'll be learning in your 11th standard also, but this is what we had learned so far. And we have the S, P block elements, D block elements, and F block elements, right? So what else? You learned about chemical reactions and equations, right? So what are the different chemical reactions? You learned about combination and decomposition, right? And what else? Displacement. And we also learned about double displacement. So these are the different kinds of combination, decomposition, displacement, how different type of compounds form from these different kinds of reaction. And you also know in this balancing equations, you also learned about balancing when we talked about the chemical reactions and equations. So what else did you learn? You learned about metals and non-metals, the properties of metals and non-metals, what are the trends, what is ductility, malleability, right? And where are they used, what are the kind of reactions the metals and non-metals undergo. You learned about acids, bases, and salts. Where how do we call something as an acid? What are the theory behind the formation of acids and bases? What are the types of reactions? What is neutralization? Such things. And some of you would also have learned about solutions, colloidal solutions. Solutions are nothing but homogeneous mixtures. So what are the properties of solutions? When do we call something as a solution? What are colloids? So these are pretty much the basic things what you would have learned about in chemistry till now, till 10th. So far you have been looking at chemistry as, so science as biology, physics, and chemistry. This is what you have been looking at. Now, from the 11th standard onwards, you are going to be looking at chemistry in a different way. So this is how you are going to look at it, right? So you are going to look at in terms of chemistry as organic, inorganic, and physical. Okay. Here, in organic, you'll be learning about carbon compounds. So far you learned the valency of carbon, alcohols, and carboxylic acids. But we also have different kind of carbon containing compounds. So if you look around the nature, there is a lot of organic compounds present, and thereby not just carbon, hydrogen. The carbon compounds also contain nitrogen, sulfur, there are different functional groups which are present in the organic compounds, which give rise to different kind of reactivity to the carbons. So all those things will be learned in organic chemistry. Coming to inorganic, you learned already about the periodic table, how to form a periodic table. And here you will be learning about the structure of atom. What exactly is the structure of atom? Whatever you learned in your 9th standard regarding the structure of atom. Additionally, in depth, you will be learning about the structure of atom. You will be learning about metals and non-metals, acids and bases and salts in depth. The basic was already covered in your 10th. So all these topics will be covered in depth, the inorganic. The next thing in physical, what you learn about is the chemical reactions and equations. You learned what are the different types of reactions, how the balancing occurs, right? And you also learned about the different states of matter present. So we have solid, liquid, and gas. Other than that, you'll be learning in depth about these states. For solid state, there is a separate chapter. The gaseous state, there is a separate chapter. So you'll be learning all these topics, whatever was presented to you in 10th, in depth in your 11th and 12th. And there is also going to be some amount of math involved in the physical chemistry. So you'll be learning about some basic concepts which help you to calculate the molarity, normality, mole concept, which all is going to be covered in your learning. Some part will be covered in the bridge course. So there is some math involved. Don't worry, it's not too tough. It's just some basic multiplication, division, and addition. So as long as you are able to do that, you should be able to do the basic math if you understand the concepts. The split of this chemistry is going to be about 40% of physical, 35% of organic, and about 25% for inorganic. This is what the split is going to be. And there will be some nuclear chemistry, environment chemistry, such things which are just a compilation of all these three topics. Also, there are some topics which are important. Next, what are we going to learn in this session? You have learned chemical reactions and equations. So what did you learn? You learned about balancing and different types, as I was saying. In 11th and 12th, you are going to talk about some other reactions also, which are called as redox reactions. They are called as redox reactions, and also some basic concepts. Redox reactions are oxidation reduction reactions. What are they called as? Oxidation and reduction. Okay, this is the reaction, redox reaction. So in this redox reactions, you'll be learning about how to balance it, what kind of elements will form redox reactions, how to identify all this. But we are not going to talk about those redox reactions here. We are talking about balancing. So far you have learned balancing by hit and trial method, right? Balancing of chemical equations. How many of you remember the balancing equations, or did you forget about it? We'll try to do an example. Yeah, we'll try to solve it together. So this is an example given here, where the PCl5 phosphorus pentachloride, phosphorus pentachloride is reacting with water to give ortho or phosphoric acid. We'll call it as phosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid, and you have hydrochloric acid. So this is the reaction. Yeah, just when we see the reaction, try to call it by their names instead of their formulas so that you'll remember what is happening in the reaction. Now back to balancing. How do we balance this, right? Let's try to do it together. So we use the principle where we are supposed to use change only the coefficients but not the subscripts of the reaction. And the principle here we are going to use is whatever we talked about earlier in the class, which is law of conservation of mass. Put forth by, that's right, Lavoisier, who's the father of modern chemistry, conservation of mass. The balancing is based on the principle that mass of reactants is equal to mass of products. That is why we equate the number of atoms on the left hand side to the right hand side. That is, we equate the number of atoms in the reactant side to that of product side. So how do we do that? We can change only the coefficients before the formulas, but not the subscripts present in the formulas. That is the one important thing what you have to remember when you are balancing, isn't it? Now, to the balancing, we write the number of atoms for reactants and products. Let's write products here. What are the reactants here? PCl5 and H2O. But what are the type of atoms present? We have phosphorus, we have chlorine, we have hydrogen, and we have oxygen. This would be the reactant side. On the product side, the same atoms will exist, isn't it? There is no new atom which is going to come and enter into the reaction. Whatever is present will only be present. There is only rearrangement. So we have phosphorus, chlorine, hydrogen, and oxygen, isn't it? These are the four atoms which are present. So phosphorus, chlorine, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, chlorine, hydrogen, oxygen. So it will help you if you can make a table like this whenever you are writing a reaction. So these are the atoms, types of atoms. Now we have to count the atoms. Let's do that, shall we? Phosphorus, there is one on the left hand side, one on right hand side. Chlorine, there are 5 here, 5 in the subscript, isn't it? So that means it is 5 chlorine atoms on the right hand side, sorry, left hand side, and 5 chlorine on the product side, or 1 chlorine. There should be 5, but there is only 1 on the product side. 5 chlorines on the reactant and 1 chlorine in the product side. For the hydrogens, we have 2 hydrogen atoms on the left hand side. If you look to the right hand side, there is 3 in H3PO4 and 1 in HCl. So it will come down to 4, isn't it? So there are 4 hydrogens which is present in the product side. Coming to oxygen, there is 1 here on the reactant side and 4 when coming to the product side. Now, okay. Now coming to it, we know that these are the atoms. So how do we balance it? If we look at the phosphorus, we know that it is equal, 1 and 1, right? For chlorine, there is 5 on the reactant side, there is 1 only on the product side. So in order to fix this, we can multiply by 5 and this 5 can be added as the coefficient for the product side. So I can write 5 here, isn't it? I can write it as 5 HCl. Now chlorine is balanced, but hydrogens are increased, isn't it? So if we count 3 plus 5, we have 8 of hydrogens on the product side. So there are 4 which are added, which will give the number of hydrogen atoms to 8. So in order to fix this to the reactant side, we can use a multiple 4, which will give you 8 hydrogens, Now we have the multiple 4 here. But now the number of oxygens also have increased. There are in total 4. So there are total 4 oxygens after fixing, isn't it? There are total 4 oxygens after fixing, and there are 4 on the product side. So now if you see, number of phosphorus is 1 and 1, right? And the chlorines is 5 and 5, hydrogen is 8 and 8, and oxygen atoms is 4 and 4. Now it is balanced. So if now I call it as a balanced equation, this is what I will get. That is phosphorus pentachloride plus 4H2O with H3PO4, which gives rise to H3PO4 and 5 hydrochloric acid molecules. So this is how we balance using the hit and trial method. I have to go from phosphorus to chlorine to hydrogen to oxygen. If something is again multiplying, I have to change everything. That is how we do it. Now that we have done it, right, we can't use this approach everywhere in the chemistry. I was talking about redox reactions, isn't it? In redox reactions, we use something called as oxidation number method or half reaction method. Oxidation number or half reaction method, because there are charged species present. Charged species. which are present in the redox reactions. So if I have, we'll have something like these kind of atoms in redox species. So there will be number of charged species where the charge has to be balanced, also the number of atoms which needs to be balanced. So following a simple hit and trial method will not be easy for balancing a redox reaction. So we use different kind of methods. But these methods are not going to be covered in the bridge course. You'll be learning them in your 11th and 12th. We are here we are concentrating only on balancing of chemical reactions here. Why is it important? So talking about balancing chemical equations, what did we do? I wrote a formula containing PCl5, which is reacting with H2O, which is giving rise to H3PO4 and plus HCl. This is the equation I wrote. And then I balanced it using what? I wrote a 5 here and a 4 here and I balanced, isn't it? So when I balanced, what exactly did I do? I said that I have to take one PCl5 which will react with 4 H2O molecules and can give 1 H3PO4 and 5 HCl molecules. This is what I was mentioning when I'm saying balancing. So when I say something to be balanced, this is what I'm talking about. I am talking about the amount of reactants which has to be used to form certain amount of products. So that is why we do balancing. We do something called as stoichiometric analysis. We do something called as stoichiometric analysis, which relates to the amount of reactants and products measured. Now, when we are balancing, when we are writing it, we write a skeletal equation which contains molecular formula. I wrote PCl5, H2O, HCl, which is all molecular formula, isn't it? Now, in this session, what we are going to concentrate is to find out molecular formula. How do you find the molecular formula for a substance? That is what we are going to focus on. How do we do? So, generally, we use balancing or crisscross method. So if I say, tell me the compound forming from magnesium and oxygen when it reacts together. Suppose this is what something I give. Okay, immediately you'll write, oh, Mg. Mg has a valency of 2 plus. Valency is the number of electrons present in the outermost shell. Based on the valency and the octet rule, you'll see how many electrons it can take in or give. That is what is valency. That is what is crisscross method. Right? So you write immediately Mg is 2 plus and oxygen is 2 minus, and using the crisscross method, you write the formula MgO. Correct? Now, this is the valency method. Suppose I ask a person to write, okay, give me the compound which forms between iron and chloride, okay, Fe and Cl. So I get 3 answers. All right, I got this, and I got this. I got 3 answers. Which answer is correct out of these 3 compounds? Which answer is correct? I got multiple answers. How do I determine? I know that iron has 2 plus as well as 3 plus. 2 plus as well as 3 plus, whereas chlorine has only 1 minus. So based on that, these 2 compounds can be possible, whereas this cannot be possible because of the valency of iron and chloride. This compound formation is not possible. We know that based on valency. So as you see, for already known compounds, determining the formula is easy. But what about if I have a compound which is completely new? I was walking through and I found a new compound and I want to determine the molecular formula. How do we do it? We do it by using something called as elemental analysis. We do it using elemental analysis. So we use elemental analysis, which basically is based on combustion, which uses the combustion reaction in order to determine the molecular formula. So all the organic compounds, they react with oxygen or burn in oxygen to give off carbon dioxide and water. So if there is sulfur or nitrogen present, I will get sulfur dioxide or nitrogen as gas also. So based on what is present in the compound, there will be different types of gases. And then using balancing of chemical reaction, I will know the formula of the organic compound. Okay, so we will learn slowly on how we arrived at the organic compound based on elemental analysis. At this stage, you will need to know first how to determine the molecular formula, isn't it? So this balancing helps in our elemental analysis for determining the molecular formula of organic compounds. Why is it necessary? Because we have different substances, isn't it? We have carbon and oxygen. For each element, for each compound, there are different. For carbon monoxide, there is 1:1 ratio. In case of carbon dioxide, we have 1:2 oxygens present. In case of phosphorus and chloride, we have PCl3 as well as PCl5. So determining the formula is not easy as you have learnt in your lower standards. So we need to use a new method for determining molecular formula, which is the elemental analysis, which I was talking about. Okay. Now, before we go into the molecular formula, how to determine the molecular formula from elemental analysis, how do we determine it? We need to know what is atomic mass and gram atomic mass. This you learnt in your 9th standard, right? So there we have a table where you have hydrogen, different kinds of elements with different kinds of elements. How did you find out what is the atomic mass here? The atomic mass is assigned based on the carbon 12. The atomic mass is determined based on carbon 12. The carbon 12 is given as 12 atomic mass units. That is the mass of one carbon, 12 atomic mass units. So the masses of all these other elements is based on the carbon's atomic mass. So if I say, when I say hydrogen has atomic mass of 1, what I mean is it is 1/12 to that of carbon 12 atomic mass. It is 1/12. So when I say sodium is 23, that means it is 23/12 of carbon. So we are basically giving the ratio to that relative to that of the standard, which is carbon 12. Now we know what is atomic mass. What is molar mass? Molar mass is the mass of grams present in 1 mole of a compound. Just like for length you have meter, for temperature you have is it Celsius? Is it Fahrenheit? It's Kelvin. Remember that. For temperature, it is Kelvin. That is the standard unit which you have learned in your way back in your 6th or 7th standard. All right. So similarly, as it is for length and temperature, for amount of a substance, mass is not the standard unit. We use something called as moles, which is the standard unit for determination of the amount of the substance. The mole is what is used for determining the amount. Now, that is molar mass. So, how do you find molar mass? Suppose I have a compound. Oxygen, we will take oxygen. Yeah. So, in oxygen, they have said that the atomic mass is 16, isn't it? Whereas oxygen exists as a molecule in terms of diatomic. We have O2. So, how do I determine the molar mass? 16 is the atomic mass plus 16 because I have 2 oxygen molecules. So the molar mass will be 32 gram per mole. Gram per mole is the unit for molar mass. That is, I have 32 grams of oxygen in 1 mole of oxygen gas. So when I say molar mass, this is how the statement should be. That means 1 mole of oxygen contains 32 grams of oxygen in 1 mole. That is what it means. So that is why we write the unit as gram per mole. Similarly, if I have to write for CH4, the atomic mass of carbon is 12 plus 4 times hydrogen, which is 1. So I get 16 gram per mole. What is CH4? Methane, isn't it? So that means in 1 mole of methane, I have 16 grams. I have 16 grams of the gas. That would be molar mass. Molar mass is the mass in grams of 1 mole of the compound. So we have something called as molar mass triangle. The number of moles is related to both molar mass and mass. Molar mass, in the other hand, we have just seen that it depends on the atomic mass. We use atomic mass and we have to have the molecular formula in order to determine, isn't it? We use the molecular formula and atomic mass in order to determine the molar mass. This molar mass in turn is useful in determining the number of moles. What is the relation? The number of moles, which is represented as N, would be equal to mass with the small m divided by capital M, which is the molar mass. So the number of moles equals mass over molar mass. This is the relation. For example, if we have to calculate for something, CH4, let's take same example, which is methane. So CH4 molar mass was found to be 16 grams per mole. So suppose I ask you a question, how many moles is present in 32 gram of methane is my question. So immediately what you can do, N equals small m over capital M. Small m is given as 32. Capital M 16. So I would get 2. That means in 32 grams of methane, 2 moles of methane is present. So we can relate, we can find out moles when mass is given. So that is the relation between the mass of a substance and moles. This moles will help in determining the molecular formula. So let's look at molecular formula. What is molecular formula? It will give you the exact number of atoms. So when I said CH4, what did I say? That it has 4 hydrogens with 1 oxygen. So for example, if I take glucose, the formula is C6H12O6. Everyone would have read photosynthesis. So we would know what is glucose. So C6H12O6. That means there are 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens and 6 oxygen atoms. So other than molecular formula, we have something called as empirical formula. Empirical formula is the simplest ratio of atoms present in a compound. So for glucose, it would be, glucose will be C1H2O1. That would be the formula, empirical formula of glucose. How do we write it? If we look at the glucose, right? The smallest common factor is 6. I divide it by 6. What do I get? I get C1, H2 and O1, which is the empirical formula of glucose. So that is how we determine the empirical formula. We divide by the least common factor and get the empirical formula. What do we take? We take the least common factor. Least common factor. So this is empirical formula. So in order to find the molecular formula, we need something called as empirical formula, right? The smallest whole number ratio of atoms will give you empirical formula. So for finding empirical formula, we need to know about the weight percent or the weight which is present in a constituent atom. Okay, with their atomic masses. So how do we do it? Let's look at an example. So there is an illustration which is given here. A compound contains 71.23% of carbon and hydrogen of 12.95% and oxygen of 15.81%. So this is the weight percentage which is given for each compound. So based on that, we write a table like this. What do we write? We write what are the elements. So carbon, hydrogen and oxygen is given. So I write the carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. And then we know based on the table the atomic mass. For carbon it is 12, for hydrogen it is 1 and for oxygen it is 16. And the weight percentage which is given is also written. What is the weight percent? 71.90%, hydrogen 12.95 and oxygen it is 15.81%. So this is what is given. What is given. So we have to immediately, when you see a question like this, you are supposed to make a table like this. And then we did find the moles of atom. How do we find out the moles? N equals small m over capital M is how you write it. N equals small m over capital M. So this is how we determine the number of moles, isn't it? So based on that, the weight will be taken as mass and atomic mass will be taken as the mass here. So number of moles is m over m. So here carbon atomic mass will be taken and this will be the mass. So number of moles is the n. So 71.93 divided by 12, you will get 5.936. 12.95 divided by 1 for these three, you will get 12.95. And for these two, you will get 0.988. These are the number of moles based on the formula of mass divided by molar mass of atomic mass. It can be given. We found out the moles of atom. Now, after finding out moles of atoms, you need to find out the simplest atomic ratio for determining the empirical formula. The question asked is, What is the empirical formula of the compound? So what do? You have to take the least number here. Because we do not have a common factor here, how do I find out the simplest atomic ratio when there is no common factor? I take out the least number. So out of these three, this is 5.9, 12.9 and 0.9. The least number here is 0.98. So for all the three numbers, we divide by the least atomic number and then give the values. We have to round it off to the whole numbers. So this value will give 6, this ratio will give 13, and this ratio will give 1. So that means carbon, 6 atoms are present, 13 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen. So you get C6H13O, which is the simplest whole ratio of atoms. We found out the simplest whole number to find out the empirical formula. So this would be the empirical formula. Next, this was the example. So what did you do? You took a mass percentage analysis, found out the moles, did the whole number ratio, and then you found the empirical formula. So from that you will be able to find out the molecular formula also. Let's look at how you can find the molecular formula. Let's look at an example. Okay, before the example, let's find out what is the difference, the relation between empirical and molecular formula. So there should be a common factor between empirical and molecular formula, similar to the example which we saw for glucose. We divided it by 6, right? So there should be a common factor. There will be a common factor if it has an empirical formula. So that common factor can be found out by dividing the molecular mass with empirical mass. If we divide the molecular mass with empirical mass, you will be able to find out the common factor. Now, for example, okay, glucose has the empirical formula of CH2O and molecular mass is 180. How do you determine the molecular formula? This is just an example. I have given you the empirical formula and I have given you the molecular mass. So, first we have to find out the empirical mass, isn't it? The common factor equals molecular mass over empirical mass. How do we find out the empirical mass? Similar to how we calculated the molar mass. 12 CH2O, right? So 12, 2 times 1 for hydrogen, and for oxygen it would be 16. So the empirical mass would come down to 30. Okay. Next, what we do, we have to find out the common factor. Common factor is molecular mass divided by empirical mass. So it would be 180 divided by 30, which will give you the 6. What is the empirical formula? CH2O. So the molecular formula will be written as CH2O. I have to multiply with this common factor. What is the common factor here? 6. So if I multiply, I get C6. 6 times 2, 12, H12 and O6. So you get a molecular formula from the empirical formula by multiplying the common factor. This is the relation between empirical formula and molecular formula. Let's look at an example. So we have this question where it says for carbon, hydrogen and nitrogen has these elements with the ratio. They have the mass ratio at this. So because we are going to divide it at the end to find out the empirical ratio, even if this ratio is given, we can take it as grams to the 100. Then calculate the empirical formula and also molecular mass is given, and then they ask to find out what is the molecular formula. So what did I say for finding out empirical formula? We need to write a table first. So first we write out what are the given elements. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen are the given elements, and then we find out what is the atomic mass. We have 12, 1 and 14 for hydrogen, right? And mass ratio which is given. So 9, 1 and 3.5. Previously when weight percentage is given, isn't it? There we take it as 100 grams and write the percentages. Okay, percentages is taken to be as for each. Now here when ratio is given anyhow, because we are going to divide it by the common factor, it wouldn't matter. So the mass ratio is written as such, 9, 1 and 3.5. If weight percentage is given, write it as such. Mass ratio is given, write it as such. And then take the number of moles. The mass ratio is taken as mass, and if weight percentage is given, take it as mass and then divide it by atomic mass in order to find out the moles. So 9 divided by 12, 1 by 1 and 3.5 divided by 14. You get 3 values, 0.75, 1 and 2.5. Now the simplest atomic ratio is found out by dividing all these 3 by the least number. Which is the least number here? 0.25. So I divide each value by 0.5 and then you have to round it off. More than 0.5 to the greater number, less than 0.5 to the lower number. So I have to round it off. So I get the values 3, 4 and 1 here. So that means 3 atoms of carbon, 4 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of nitrogen is present in the empirical formula. So you get the empirical formula as C3H4N. Now, they have given the molecular mass to be 108 and molecular formula has to be found out. How do we find out? By finding out the common factor, right? For finding out the common factor, I need empirical mass. So, empirical mass, that is for the formula C3H4N, I have to find out the empirical mass. So, that means 3 times 12, for hydrogen 4 times 1, and for nitrogen 14 is the atomic mass. It is given right here. You calculate, add it and multiply it and then you get as 54. Now for the conversion factor, we know that we need the conversion factor for writing out the molecular formula. So the molecular mass divided by empirical mass would be 108, which is already given in the question, 54 which you found out here, you will get 2. That means if I multiply this by 2, I get the molecular formula as C6H8N2. So this is how you find out a molecular formula when mass ratio is given and molecular mass is given. These two should be given to find out molecular formula. If molecular mass is not given, you can find out only empirical formula but not the molecular formula. Let's look at an other example. Okay, we will solve it together. Please try solving it with me together in order for you to understand it. So here if you see, the question says that what is the empirical formula of the substance when 40% of the carbon, 53.3% of oxygen and the rest percent is hydrogen. So we know that always the percentage will be equated to 100, isn't it? So we have 40% and 53.3. Remaining is hydrogen. So it has 93.3%. The remaining is hydrogen. What is the remaining percentage? So I have to divide, subtract it by 93, isn't it? So 100 divided by 93, 7, and then you have a 9, you get 6.7% to be the mass of hydrogen. So now let's write the percentage weight. We have 40% and for oxygen it is 53.3 and rest is hydrogen. We found that out, which is to be 6.7%. So these are the 3% which you got. So I do not have to write the percentage here. If you just write the value, it should be enough. So after finding out the percentage weight, I need to find out the number of moles. So what do? I do 40 divided by 6. I do 40 by 12 and then 6.7 by 1 and then 53.3 divided by 16. Now you find out the moles and which has to be rounded off. How do we find out? So we do a basic calculation here. So when we divide this, we get 3.33 and 6.7 would be 6.7 and 3.33. So here we know that the least value is 3.33, right? So I have to divide 3.33 by 3.33, 6.7 by 3.33 and the 3.33 divided by 3. So when I do this, I get the value of 1. This will be approximately 2 and this will be 1. So when I write it, so let's write it in a different color. Yeah. So 1 and this will be approximately 2 and this will be 1. So that means there is 1 carbon, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. So this is how you can find out the empirical formula when such thing is given. So if I give you a molecular mass for it, you can use the empirical mass and determine the conversion factor, which is molecular mass given by empirical mass, and then multiply the common factor to the empirical formula and thereby find out the molecular formula. Okay, so this is how you do a problem. I find out the percentage weight by here, the rest is hydrogen, totaling will be 100%, and then find out the moles by dividing weight over atomic mass and then divide the least numbers to find out the simplest atomic ratio and then get the empirical formula. So let's look at another question, shall we? what is the empirical formula of a substance having 40% of sulfur and 60% of oxygen. So first what do? We have the atomic masses which has to be written for sulfur and oxygen. So it is 32 and 60, and then the percentages, it is 40 and this is 60%. So if we write down the percentage, after that we calculate the number of moles. So 40 divided by 32, 60 divided by 16. So you will get 1.25 and 3.75. So after you get that, we write the simplest atomic ratio. How do we do it? We take the least number. Here the least number is 1.25. So 1.25 divided by 1.25, 3.75 divided by 1.25. So for this you will get a value of 3 and this is 1, right? So the formula will be S1S and O3. So the formula here is SO3. This will be the empirical formula. So sometimes the empirical formula you get can also be equal to the molecular formula also. You might get the same. There might be questions like that. So you might get this question where they'll give you this value and they'll give you an options to find out the empirical formula. So this is one illustration for you where you can have to find out what is the empirical formula. Also the molecular formula. So they have given you the percentages mass here, which will be equated to the 100% and found out. We looked at the example here, and then they asked you to find out, okay, what is the empirical and molecular formula. But if you see here, they haven't given you the molecular mass. In this question, the molecular mass is not given. They have given mole and mass. So we know that number of moles equal to mass over molecular mass, isn't it? So the mole is given, mass is given, that is small m is given and n is given. We have to find out the molar mass. Molar mass is the one present in 1 mole of the substance, right? So using this formula, you'll be able to find out the molar mass and then calculate the empirical and molecular formula. We will look at the answer for this in the next session. Meanwhile, this is an example for you where you have to try to use this session today and solve this question. So now, what was the summary of this session? We found out how to balance the equations using the hit and trial method, and we found out balancing, and we also looked at how to find out the number of moles, right, using the mass and molar mass. Mass divided by molar mass will give you the number of moles. What else did we look at? We also looked at how to find out the empirical formula using weight percentage and mass ratio. Both can be given. Both can be given, isn't it? And then we also found out molecular formula. How to find out molecular formula? How do we find out molecular formula? From empirical and molecular mass, using the common factor or conversion factor. Using the factor, we'll be able to find out the mass. So here we found out all these things on how to find out the formulas. So if you have a new substance in front of you, you can use this example in order to find a new formula. That is, the formula of a new substance can be determined by using this. So this brings us to the summary of this session 1. So we are going to see the stoichiometric analysis, how the balanced chemical reactions, how the amount of reactants and products can be determined in the session 2. Thank you for listening to us. I'm from Concept.